Hello, this is DCJ Gaming. Today I want to do a quick tutorial on the basics of replication for multiplayer games in Unreal Engine 4. Not going to go into a lot of examples on how to do things, but just how it works, and I'll do some basic demonstrations. I'll start off quick. I know it's a little rough looking, but this is the best way I can kind of think of how to explain this and what makes sense in my head. But typically when you're playing single player, you don't have to worry about a server or a client. There's only one instance of the game going on, right? You're playing just on your computer. There's nothing else to worry about. When you're playing in multiplayer, and I'm going to specifically talk about listen servers, you then have multiple machines, the server, and then everybody else playing will be the client. So when you are playing with one of your friends and you're hosting the match, the lobby, you are the server and player. And that's what a listen server is versus a dedicated server where something else is actually operating as the server. In a listen server, you're hosting, you're also a player. When your buddy joins, he comes in as a client. So we're going to be going through this, an example of you, the server, and two friends, client 1 and client 2. And basically what happens is you have three machines. One of them is the server. The other two are remote clients. It almost creates three different universes of the game, alternate dimensions almost in some sense. And as you're building a game and trying to replicate, you want all of those alternate dimensions or instances to be the same. And how this works generally is things need to go to the server and then be distributed back out to the clients from the server. But I'll show an example of kind of how this really starts to break out. So when you're playing single player, let me make sure that's set right. All right, so here's just one player, and you can see there's only one instance, new player, server. Let's change that to 2. We switch to 2, so listen server, now we're going to have the server and a client. Okay, so we have 2 now. When we come in here and look here, there's 4 different options. And that's because you have 2 universes or instances of the game have now been created. And within it, there's the server. So the server, you, the host, are playing in one, and your buddy is playing in another. But then there's a replication or a clone, if you want to think about it that way, of yourself in your buddy's instance, and your friend, there's a replication of him in your instance, which you as the host, you're the server, and he's the client, but he has a server representation, and you have a representation of yourself on the client's instance. So I hope that makes sense. I think as we continue to go, it'll make more sense. And we're going to break this out to 3 now, where it really starts to amplify. So we'll go listen server plus 2 clients. So here's our 2 clients, server. Now when we come back to here, we have 9 different instances. There are 3 players, but each of them have themselves and then 2 clones within the other multiverses of this lobby. So you have server, and then within the server, there's the client 1 and client 2, your 2 friends that you're playing with. And then your friend's instance, where he's the client, there's a clone from the server, the other player that is actually serving it, and then there's a clone or replication of the other client, and then there's your second buddy that joined, the first buddy, and yourself. So we now have to think about how do we get information to flow from each of these spheres so that they all equal the same thing. And the way we're going to do this is I'm going to demonstrate a animation. So I just have this little chest bump taunt animation. I'm going to show why it won't work for you when you try to do this, how you would normally set up in single player, and then how to go through it for multiplayer. I hope that explains some of the replication. So the way we're going to do this is I'm just going to use cap locks I have that button open, my input. If you want to get that, I'll delete this. Caps lock, boom. And when we press it, we are going to play anim montage. Animation montage. Hook that up to pressed. And I'm going to grab this animation. You can do this with any animation you want. I just think this is a good way to show how replication works. So when we press caps lock, we'll run this animation. I'm going to pop this out to a new window. And let me try to get this set up a little bit better. Okay, so up at the top, you can see my cursor. Here's the server, here's client 1, here's client 2. And caps lock is the button we're using. So get them in a way where we can all see them, or all see each other. Okay, so let's start first as a server. So server, when I press caps lock, you can see on the right screen, the server can see himself taunting, but when you look in the top left, bottom left, the client can't see that happening. Now when I flip over to the top left screen, the client, same thing. He can see himself doing it, but nobody else can. And that goes back to this concept here where this event is only happening within one of these bubbles. It's not going anywhere else. So the clones of the player in the other bubbles, the other person's instance, they aren't seeing what's happening. So that's the whole premise of replication, is how do we get that information to go to the server and then to go to everybody else. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to do a couple of custom events. And we're going to, actually, before I do that, I want to show you all one more thing too. Print string. I just want to show this and how this is running when we do this. So I'm just going to do print string hello, just to show you how this is working. So as the server, when I press it, you can see in the top left, server hello, server hello, server hello. I go to a client, client 1, hello, 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 and client 2, client 2, client 2. So this information is not going anywhere. So the first thing we're going to do is type in has authority, and we'll connect that here. And what this macro does, it's just within the engine, so you can just type it in, grab this macro one, is it's looking at who is sending the command and are they running from the server or are they a client. So your clients will always be remote and your server will always be authority. So server, client. We'll come back in, I'll show this. So, whoops, so we have the server, it's printing server, and this client, oh, okay, it's got a bug, this client here, this client. So we need to get this information from the server to the clients and from the clients to the server. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to make an event, custom event. We're going to call this taunt, which is what this animation is, taunt underscore server. And next, we're going to make a custom event called taunt underscore MC for multicast. So within the taunt server, there's this option up here in the top right under replicates. By default, it's not replicated. We do want this to replicate. We're going to switch this to run on server. I'm going to have it be reliable. And I'll explain what these are in a second. The other one we're going to set to multicast and reliable. So looking at the definitions, run on server. So replicate this event from the net owning client. So from one of these two clients to the server. By default, the server, the host in a listen server, is already running on the client, or is already running on the server. They're not a client. So by default, you don't have to do that. And that's why this all works in a single player game, no problem. But the client needs to get this instruction to go to the server. And so that's what this event will do. And the multicast definition replicate this event from server to everyone else. Server executes this event locally too, only call this from the server. So this can only be called from the server, and then it will take this command and cast it to all of the other clients. So when we think about client 1, it's going to send up, I want to do this animation to the server. The server will then run that, and it will send it back out to all of the clients. So if you had client 3 and client 4, you had 5 people going. When the client sends it to the server then multicasts it to all the different clients. So that's what the multicast does, but it has to be done from the server. So I'll show that actually here quick. We're going to move this out of the way, and why this is kind of a nice trick to have. So if you press this and we do taunt MC, taunt multicast, for the multicast, we run this animation. This is only going to work in the server. I'll show you why. Everybody load in. Okay, so get everybody in a spot where they can see each other. Okay, so here's our server on the right. When he presses it, everybody can see him doing that animation. And that's because he's already the server, he's the host, and so he's allowed to replicate this. But your clients, it's still only working for them. And that is because a multicast event needs to be run from the server. So we're still only running it from the client. We're not getting it up into the server yet. So to do that, I'm going to bring back, get rid of these print strings. We'll bring back this switch has authority. And so if it has authority, if you're the server, you're already running on the server. So you can run the multicast. But if not, you need to get your instruction, your command to the server. So now we'll do, if you're a client, run this to the server. And the server is pretty simple. We'll just run the multicast. And then our multicast will play this animation. So now this will work. Set everybody up. Okay, here's our server. Everybody can see him taunting, and we'll switch over to one of the clients, and everybody can see him taunting. And the way this is working is, let's move this. I'm going to move him off screen, but I just want to show you within some of the debug. So client 1. So as I press it, oh, not the right one. Player 1, client. There we go. So as I press this, you can see it's running from remote to taunt server, and then the multicast. When I switch over to player 1 server, it's getting that command from the server. And what's interesting about this is you don't see the highlighted line coming from the cap lock press anymore, because these are two different instances of the same player, server and the client. So that covers animations. I want to do a little bit of a discussion on variables, which get a little bit more complicated, but would be happy to dive into it deeper, but I just want to do a basic one here quick. So I think I already made this. Yep, so just make a Boolean. I just called mine has taunted. And let me reset this. By default, when you make a variable, it'll have no replication. I'm going to keep that on none. We're going to switch out later, but I just want to show you how this works. So when we press this button, we're going to set this to on. By default, it's false, but when we press it, we will be taunting. So, this could be like you're attacking, you're doing an attack animation, or you're crouched or jumping. and you're triggering a Boolean or some sort of variable to indicate that you are in fact doing that. Obviously, this replication for variables applies to everything: health, attack, all that, stamina. But we're just going to keep it simple with the true false. So I'm going to do key input 9, and all this is just going to be is a print string, and we're just going to print string, not set, get. We're just going to print string if this is true or false. So by default, it'll be false, so I'll print string false, and then after we taunt, or when we give the instruction to taunt at least, it'll set it to true. This isn't going to work yet because variables need to be replicated as well. But I want to demonstrate why it won't work. So here we have our server. When I press 9, you can see the print string false, false, false. We taunt, press it again, true, 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 true. But when we switch over to a client, false, we taunt, everybody sees it. It's saying true for the client, but I need to do one more thing because it's going to be incorrect for the server, and I need to do one thing to show this. Has taunted client. You don't need to do this part. This is just for visualization. I'm making two events. They're both going to do the same thing, print string, but one is going to run on the client, and one is going to run on the, or one's going to run on the server, and one's going to run on the client, the owning client. So one is going to run here or here, depending if you're player 1 or 2, and one's going to be sent to the server. Both are going to do the same thing. Set this up. Then all this is going to do has taunted and has taunted. The OCD comes in, going to line all this up. Okay, so when we press 9, we're going to run an event only on the client to say have we taunted or not, and then to the server. And we're going to do this on the client. So here's a client, top left, false, 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 client and server. We taunt, and now when we do it, the client is showing that we have taunted. That variable has been set to true. But the server is showing false. The server doesn't know that this variable has been turned on. It's going to be the same thing with health. The server might think you have 100 out of 100 health. The client thinks you have 80. Obviously, that creates some issues in your game for multiplayer. So the way to fix this is similar to running an animation. We need to send the request to the server, have the server then conduct the action, and let everybody else know what has changed with that variable. But we don't have to do that with a multicast, thankfully. We can do it within any variable. So I'm going to click the variable, and under replication, we're going to set this to replicated. So what this means is this will be replicated from the server to the client. So what we need to do is when we input an action, do the check, and if we don't have authority, we can't then set it on the server, so we need to pass it to the server so we can replicate. What's important to always remember with variables, though, is the server needs to be the one setting it to replicate. So we have this replicated, so now you would think, okay, it's replicated, it should work. Well, it's not going to, and I'll show you why. All right, we're playing top left, we're going to taunt. Nothing, right? No change. Client is still showing we have taunted, server saying we haven't. True, false. It's because this needs to be set on the server. If you remember, when you do an input, it's coming from the client side, unless you're the host. But if you join somebody else's server, you're the client, and we need to pass that request to the server to set it. So we're going to come back, replug this back in. So you press the button, switches authority. A client won't. A client will be remote, so it'll run taunt server, which will then run to the multicast. So I'm going to input this here. And what this will do is now the server, the host, he'll press the button, he has authority, he'll set it to on, he'll do the multicast from the animation. The clients, or those that have joined, they'll press it, they will not have authority, they'll come down the remote path. They'll then run this event on the server, which will then turn it on and run the animation. And because we have this variable set to replicated, it'll then replicate from the server to the rest of the clients, or really to the client, so that they both have the same value for that variable. And I'll demonstrate that quick. Okay. Both are false. Now we taunt. And we check it again. True, 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 true. Well, there we go. Just a quick demonstration on multiplayer, basics of replication, what makes sense in my head, as I've kind of been doing this for the last 2 years. I'm new to making Unreal Engine tutorials. I've watched thousands of hours as I've been working on my game, Champion of Andia, but really want to do more. And if there's anything that you would like to see or have me do a tutorial on, please let me know below in the comments. Thanks for watching.